The connection between Peace Pilgrim and Father Divine. Peace, Father Divine, peace, Mother Divine, and peace to the universal family of God. Today we look at an extraordinary exemplar in that universal family and in the spiritual history of the United States, the soul known as Peace Pilgrim, and the record of her 1940s contact with Father Divine and the Peace Mission movement. Peace Pilgrim is one who in all senses walked her talk, proving it in the radical transformation of her person and purpose. Peace Pilgrim became a living, speaking illustration of her dictum, "This is the way of peace. Overcome evil with good, falsehood with truth, and hatred with love." Peace Pilgrim was a unique, independent American saint who lived a very impressive testimony and dedication to the impersonal life, much like the sannyasis or feminine sannyasinis of Hinduism, the original Buddhist mendicants, the early Christians and Franciscans, and the dervish mendicants of Sufism. She has been called, in fact, an American St. Francis. There were once also many such itinerant spiritual practitioners in Christianity in the West, but they have diminished and become less visible, and while they still do exist, our spiritually blinded societies, obsessed with money, now often mistake them for homeless or mentally ill, and sometimes institutionalize and disappear them. Her propertylessness was intentional, however, and her decades of wandering thousands of miles across North America were an act of profound spiritual consecration. She is an American dream walker, akin to wandering spiritual practices common here prior to European arrival. When I hear the lyric, "Oh, beautiful for pilgrim feet," I especially think of her. While universalist and not creedally Christian, Peace Pilgrim became a wonderful living illustration of the Sermon on the Mount and remains a truth teacher and an inspiration to millions across religious boundaries.
I am a pilgrim, a wanderer. And a pilgrim is a wanderer with a purpose. A pilgrimage can be to a place or for a thing. And my pilgrimage is for a thing. My pilgrimage is for peace. Now there's lots of facets of peace, and it covers all of them. Peace among nations, peace among groups, peace with our environment, but also peace among individuals, and the very, very important inner peace, which is what I talk about the most.
Seemingly unknown to the world and unknown or ignored by her biographers, Peace Pilgrim made personal contact with Father Divine and the Peace Mission on 2 occasions, at least, prior to beginning her walk, both of which may have been among her sources of inspiration or spiritual transmission. The first was an occasion in December 1945 when she visited the Peace Mission to speak at a Righteous Government Forum meeting as a representative of the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom. After her speech, she met with Father Divine, who personally gave her a tour of the Unity Mission property and a lengthy interview, which I shall read in full shortly. This visit is well attested and authenticated by its 1945 publication in The New Day. As the interview will demonstrate repeatedly, Father and Peace Pilgrim, then still known as Mrs. Mildred Ryder, seem to have hit it off exceptionally well and to have authentically enjoyed meeting one another. It also seems that during the interview, Peace Pilgrim got at least a couple of insights for the first time. For example, regarding spiritual names and regarding the spiritual and democratic refusal to use racialized terms, even if they appear in the dictionary. She put all of that behind her by the time she began her personal spiritual walk as Peace Pilgrim. The second time Peace Pilgrim is known to have contacted Father was subsequent to her 1946 separation from husband Stanley Ryder a few months later, after the first meeting, when she apparently stayed in Peace Mission accommodations for a few weeks. As far as I know, this second and potentially more sustained contact is only attested in an unpublished interview conducted with Mr. Ryder by Outward Bound. Peace Mission hotels and restaurants were probably among her most affordable options, and it is likely that she remembered the friendly welcome of her first visit. This inaugurated a period of deep introspection, or coincided with the inauguration of a period of deep introspection, during which she began to die to selfishness and be reborn as Peace Pilgrim. We'll see some of that in her own words toward the end of this presentation. She became the first woman to walk the full length of the Appalachian Trail alone in one season, and in 1953 she began her outward mission and lifetime itinerancy, which only ended when she left the body in 1981. The idea that Peace Pilgrim had met Father Divine first came to my attention when I ran across a reference to it on a German-language website around 2008. At some point, I wrote to the keeper of that website and asked for the source. He had only included a sentence that Peace Pilgrim had studied with Father Divine, and of course that tantalized me. I wrote to him by email, and he responded very generously. Well, that was a difficult one. I turned my flat upside down and searched literally for 3 days for the information on Father Divine and Peace Pilgrim. Finally, success. It came from a transcript of an unpublished interview with Peace Pilgrim's former husband, conducted by Outward Bound. When I was writing my article on Peace Pilgrim, John Rush had been so kind as to send me 2 unpublished transcripts of interviews, one with Helen and Eugene Young, and one with Stanley Ryder, the former husband of Peace Pilgrim. He says, I'll type out the interesting part here, and then he typed out the section of the interview that deals with Father Divine. Since it is unpublished, I thank Mr. Ziesig very much for his generosity in complying with my request and providing the information. Interview with Stanley Ryder by Outward Bound. Outward Bound, in your opinion, what do you think made her change from a fairly regular girl to such an unusual woman with such an unusual thing to do in life? Mr. Ryder. Well, she comes from a background of very strong-minded people. Her one aunt, the oldest aunt of the 3, she was a very well-educated woman, really strong personality. And Mildred was taken. She was named after her, and she had a lot of her characteristics. She had the force to go ahead and do things. D the torpedoes, full speed ahead. I think the fact that when I dropped out of her life, she had nothing to balance her life with. At least I was a little bit of a counterbalance to the things she wanted to do. I know she never got involved romantically with anyone after me, and I think that she started studying these sorts of things. I don't know when, but she did go and spend some time in that Father Divine thing. Outward Bound. I don't think we know about that. Mr. Ryder. I don't know how long she was there, but she did go there. Outward Bound. What is that? Mr. Ryder. You don't remember Father Divine? You're not that old. Father Divine was a forerunner to Martin Luther King. He was preaching peace on earth, goodwill toward men. Outward bound. Was he W? Mr. Ryder. No, he was B. Outward bound. Where was he located? Mr. Ryder. I don't recall because it's been so long ago. He used to be in the papers a lot. Outward bound. Father Divine. Well, we'll do some research on that. Mr. Ryder. Do some research on Father Divine because I don't know how long she was there, 2 or 3 weeks or a month, something like that. I mean, she didn't stay. She went to absorb some of his teachings, I believe. Father Divine's followers came from all walks of life and sorts of colors. Outward bound then continued the interview on other topics. And the person who provided the copy to me, Mr. Frank Ziesig, concluded, as far as I know, there is no quotation from Peace herself concerning Father Divine. If you can find some more information, I would be interested as well. Hope I could help you a little further. And yes, he did very much. I thank him and I thank Father in him for providing this historically important information that Peace Pilgrim's biographers have either not been aware of or have intentionally neglected. And a little encouraging sign from Father and Mother. In doing the research for this episode, I was very delighted to notice for the first time that Mr. Ziesig's message to me was dated on March the 4th, 2009. That date that has since become so very meaningful to me personally. Whenever a saint or a saint-to-be makes personal contact with another saint, God realizer, or divine incarnation, it is most definitely significant. I personally believe that Peace Pilgrim received a spiritual transmission from Father Divine that helped her to discern her lifelong vocation, and that blessed and empowered her in the holy endeavor that lay before her, at which she was so stunningly successful. Peace Pilgrim's way is an expression of the impersonal life and the God she consistently describes and points toward is the infinite impersonal presence that Father himself continually points us toward, saying that the majority of the people who loved and truly follow him, as many as 20 million or more in the world at that time, did not know him by face or name, but by spirit, and that with or without a body, I am the same. She seems to have perfected her will over the course of her life and become quite accomplished in a life of offering that will back to its source, standing above self and manifesting the purity of impersonal love. Like St. Francis, this made her Christ-like. It made her, in many ways, like our Father. Father Divine and Peace Pilgrim stand for very similar truths and illustrate them perfectly and profoundly, but they do reach different audiences by different methods and means. There is nothing that happens by chance in our universe. Everything unfolds according to higher laws. Everything is regulated by divine order. Peace Pilgrim. The New Day published this note in its regular Righteous Government Meeting report on December the 8th, 1945 ADFD, referring to the meeting of November the 4th, 1945, toward the middle, and highlighted here. November here is actually a misprint. It was December the 4th. Tuesday, December the 4th. November the 4th was a Sunday. There was also present a representative from the Women's International League for Peace and Freedom, who spoke at length and stressed the importance of all organizations getting together and working together for peace. She also stated that she believed that a universal language would contribute much toward bringing about a better understanding among all nations. And now the rather long and very cordial interview as recorded in the same edition of the New Day, 8th of December, 1945, ADFD, beginning on page 21. Interview granted by Father to Mrs. Stanley Ryder of the International League for Peace and Freedom. That is Peace Pilgrim's name. At the time she was married to Mr. Stanley Ryder, and she was known as Mildred Ryder. Normally, the Peace Mission, or a follower of Father Divine, would not dead name someone in this way. However, her name is known to the general public, and this is a matter of the historical record as it appears. This is a record of her contact before she got her spiritual name. Continuing. Subject: the work of the Peace Mission. Given partially while on tour of the building and partially in his private study, Unity Mission Church Home and Training School, Incorporated, of Pennsylvania, 907 North 41st Street, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Tuesday evening, December the 4th, 1945, ADFD, approximately 11:30 p.m. After leaving the Righteous Government meeting, Father showed Mrs. Ryder partially through the building, pausing at the bowling alleys for a moment, and then going to the gymnasium. It was there, while watching a few of the Rosebuds playing basketball, that this interview first commenced. Thank you, Father dear. The foregoing statement is that of the transcriber, after which Mrs. Ryder firstly and enthusiastically speaks as follows. Oh, this is all so new to me. It is like entering into a new world. I mean, I can't get over how you have made these people so happy. Father, smiling. It is wonderful. Mrs. Ryder, turning to some of the followers. You all look so happy. Follower, smiling. We have reason to be happy. We are loving the Lord and are all sisters and brothers in the family of God. Father then speaks concerning the gymnasium and how all are permitted to enjoy its facilities regardless of so-called race, creed, or color. Then Mrs. Ryder speaks. But this is wonderful. Do you stay at this place all the time, or do you travel around? I know you must be extremely busy. Father, I usually visit the northeastern branches, that is, the various branches of the work here in the Northeast. Mrs. Ryder, oh, does this work extend nationally? Father, oh yes, it is just the same out west and in other parts of the United States as it is here. Mrs. Ryder, and do you have branches in other countries? Father, positively. There are followers in Australia, New Zealand, England, Switzerland, South America, and all over, and they carry on and are just the same there as they are here, because they recognize my ever-presence. Mrs. Ryder, how wonderful! Follower, and not only that, but this movement embodies all religions and brings them together. Mrs. Ryder, oh, I did not know that. I just thought it was a Christian movement. Do you mean that those of Jewish faith can come here too? Father, certainly. Mrs. Ryder, and what about the Buddhists and such faiths? Father, all faiths and religions are welcome to participate. Another follower. This Peace Mission movement is the amalgamation of all religious faiths, the amalgamation of all races, creeds, and colors. It is the zenith, the top, the pinnacle of all your fondest ideals and hopes and dreams. It is the climax. In short, it is perfection in that it embodies everything you ever hope to find in true religion as put into practice. Mrs. Ryder, My, I can't get over it, embodying all religions. That is wonderful. Father Divine, do you believe in a united world government? Father, why, positively. Mrs. Ryder, why, that is just what we stand for. And how about a universal language? Do you believe we should have one? Father, yes, I brought forth a stamp some time ago to that effect concerning the unification of the three Americas, which called for one language, one flag, and one speech. Mrs. Ryder, oh, how wonderful! Do you think English will be the universal language, or which one? I have often wondered about that. Some people think it should be Esperanto. Father, well, the English language is the appropriate language, for it is the amalgamation of all languages, you see. Mrs. Ryder, that's true. Well, I had hoped it would be English because that is the only language I really know. Father, well, the proposal of one language was first presented for the International Conference of Nations to decide upon, but I find since that time, through analyzation that the English language is the appropriate language for the language of the world, since it is the amalgamation of all languages. At least the English language consists of many different languages. Mrs. Ryder, that is true. Well, this movement is just like ours in a way, only our work is so small and yours is so large. Father, it is wonderful. At this time, the little tour continued and ended in Father's private study, where Father invited Mrs. Ryder to take a seat a moment while waiting for the commencement of the Holy Communion services. The subject was again brought up concerning Father's various proposals, which have been sent out on the various peace stamps. Father brings forth some of the stamps, and handing one to Mrs. Ryder, speaks as follows. Now this is one of my stamps I sent out to the different heads of the nations in 1938 before Czechoslovakia was invaded. Mrs. Ryder, reading the stamp. This is a lovely stamp. This is a really wonderful stamp. The stamp referred to reads as follows. Peace, peace to the world at large. Father Divine cables to Chancellor Hitler, Prime Minister Chamberlain, Premier Deladier, President Benez, President Roosevelt, September the 20th, 1938, ADFD. Why not propose purchase of coveted Czechoslovakian territory with Sudetens helping to pay for annexation, substituting cooperation and peace for terrible inhuman warfare consequences? Father Divine, quote, it is my conviction that all people under the threat of war today pray that peace may be made before rather than after war. President Roosevelt. Father then hands her another stamp, saying, and this is another one. Each stamp is a message. This is the one I mentioned about the unification of the three Americas, and one nation, one language, one flag, and one speech. Mrs. Ryder, reading the stamp, isn't it wonderful? Everything is in it. The stamp reads as follows. Peace, one nation, one language, one flag, one speech. Telegrams to President Roosevelt, Vice President Garner, and U.S. Senate, Honorable Bankhead, House of Representatives, Secretary of State Hull, and Secretary of War Woodring, December the 9th, 1939, ADFD. Why not unite the three Americas as a national and international defense for peace? Let there be the United Countries of America, even as this is the United States of America. If not, I propose that the United States purchase Central and South America and make all the Americas one democracy. Father Divine. Mrs. Ryder then speaks as follows. Why do you say three Americas? Almost everyone says two Americas. Father, Central and South America. Mrs. Ryder. Oh, yes, you include Central America. Father. Well, we believe in the unification of the three Americas, just as the wording of it explains, my version as sent out. Mrs. Ryder, again reading. Yes, quote, even as the United States of America. End quote. Father, yes, that is one step. I knew what was coming, and I thought if they could or would unite the three Americas immediately. Mrs. Ryder, that's right, Father, or else purchase Central and South America if they could not unite effectively, and bring it into one democracy. Mrs. Ryder, yes, I see, but you go further than that. Father, yes, here is another one. Mrs. Ryder, taking the stamp. Oh, yes, here you include a united world. Father, positively. The stamp referred to reads as follows: For a just and lasting peace, why not propose at the International Conference of Nations the unification of all the mutual and allied sovereignties of the universe, and let the united countries of the world be one big universal allied sovereignty. By the unity of spirit, mind, aim, and purpose, let all of the allied sovereignties unite consolidatedly, and the four freedoms will be made a reality. July the 6th, 1944, ADFD, Father Divine. Mrs. Ryder then asks a question. Do you have any influence in politics? I mean, are you trying to work into those channels? Father, well, I do to a certain extent. It does not make much difference. I will accomplish that for which I came. There is something more powerful mentally and spiritually than that of the atomic energy. The inspiration that gave the skill and the ability to the inventor and discoverer of the atomic energy is greater than that of the energy. Mrs. Ryder, yes, I can see that. Father, now these stamps, referring back to the various peace stamps, we put 2 or 3 of the stamps on each letter, and of course we are giving the message to the world. This is the most recent one for the bond drive. Father hands Mrs. Ryder the stamp, which reads as follows: Peace, everyone, for reconversion, reconstruction, and mass production, for universal unity and tranquility. For the peace we must now win, unite consolidatedly again, and buy bonds unlimitedly, the victory of peace to win. By the unity of spirit, of mind, of aim, and of purpose, we have won the victory universally, and shall win it from every angle expressible. To bring an abolition to the possibility of inflation, depressions, panics, and famines, let us unite on the home front, and let there be no division, and we will have a perfect union that is called for by our Constitution, and the universal brotherhood of man will be made a living reality. October the 23rd, 1945, ADFT, Father Divine. Father, here is the stamp that was issued prior to this present one, in reference to the buying of bonds. Mrs. Ryder reads this stamp, which says, Everybody buy bonds. For victory let all the Allies unite consolidatedly, and every American citizen buy bonds unlimitedly, for victory and a just and lasting peace, and for reconstruction, mass production, rescuing the perishing, and to care for the dying. The Axis will unconditionally surrender by sending an ambassage desiring conditions of peace. See St. Luke 14:31-32, Reverend M.J. Divine. Mrs. Ryder, that is wonderful. You work for peace. Father, positively. Mrs. Ryder, everything is included. I can't think of anything that does not agree with us. So it is wonderful. May I have some of these stamps? Father, why certainly. Mrs. Ryder, thank you very much. Father, you are welcome, I am sure. Mrs. Ryder, I am intrigued by the names. Cheerful Love. Do you name each one? Father, well, I do not name them personally. Mrs. Ryder, you don't? They take their own names? Father, well, of course, it comes to them. Mrs. Ryder, oh, I see. Whatever they select. I thought perhaps you gave the children their names. Father, well, not personally. Mrs. Ryder, I see. Father, you see, it is better revealed than told. Even from a psychological point of view, a practical psychologist can speak by mental telepathy almost as accurately and as perfectly as with the word of mouth. I interrupt here to point out that here we have a very wonderful passage about naming, getting spiritual inspiration for a name in conversation between Peace Pilgrim and Father Divine, that is probably really foreshadowing her own personal process and choice made a few years later, when she took on the name Peace Pilgrim and forsook her old name utterly. She no doubt met people named Peace on the night of this interview, and there were many with Peace in their name, and even a few with Pilgrim in their name, so she may have found precedent and inspiration. That passage is very interesting, and I would say is something that should be included in biography of Peace Pilgrim when it comes to understanding the things that came together to make her who she became. Mrs. Ryder, that's true. Do you believe there is something divine within all of us? Father, positively. And the same as your radio receiving set, you see, you can dial in on certain wavelengths. Mrs. Ryder, that's right. Well, this is one way, perhaps, that we can avoid a war by such a nice movement as this, and it seems to be gaining momentum because something will have to intervene. Father, positively. It cannot be done by violence. As I have often said, we shall have a righteous government. If not by the ballot, it will not be by the bullet, but it will be by my spirit, by the practical science of democracy and brotherhood put into practice. You spoke of love on the rostrum in your speech. Mrs. Ryder, yes, Father. And it was wonderful because it is so powerful. It transcends the fondest imagination because you cannot explain the power of love. It is stronger than death, and through it things seem to be miraculous, seem to be accomplished that are apparently impossible. Mrs. Ryder, that's right. Father, it is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Mrs. Ryder, it is wonderful. And I suppose you feel also we have to come to a point where we are no longer working for ourselves, but something much bigger than ourselves. Father, positively, positively. Mrs. Ryder, well, I feel this group understands that. Father, positively, and each follower of mine is working conscientiously and sincerely for the benefit of others, as one in mortal consciousness would work conscientiously and sincerely for himself individually. Mrs. Ryder, oh, it is wonderful. Father, they do not take a tip. They will not take presents when they live exactly according to my teaching, or gifts, for it is also in violation to the teaching of the Bible. I mean in the Old Testament. The Old Testament of the Scriptures teaches against taking tips or gifts. So therefore we produce the spirit of self-denial and bring it to fruition in the person, and therefore the person will be absolutely unselfish and therefore unbiased. Mrs. Ryder, well, you may take gifts like Christmas gifts or no gifts at all. Father, no gifts. Mrs. Ryder, and not even if one takes it for the cause they work for and not for themselves? Father, no gifts. Those of the immediate cooperative enterprises and co-workers, in the light of this truth, they may voluntarily cooperate to and for any constructive, unselfish purpose. They voluntarily do that, not for a selfish purpose, but they voluntarily do it. Now, in all of our churches, we never take up a collection. We never do any soliciting. We do not even do soliciting among the members of our churches. Whatsoever they choose to give, it is of their own voluntary volition, without any solicitation. Mrs. Ryder, they want to give. Father, that's right. They voluntarily do it, and they must be the members of the immediate church connection, like this church here is not the same church at Broad and Catherine Streets, you see. That is a different organization. But all are under the Peace Mission movement, as the sisters were telling you about the Peace Mission movement. It is a movement, and yet there are organizations organized, incorporated, and dedicated under the Peace Mission movement, the same as there are different churches under the Christian movement. In the Christian movement, there are many different churches, as you know. The Catholics, the Presbyterians, and all who believe in Jesus as the Christ. These are the different churches under the Christian movement, and yet they are not the movement itself, themselves, but they are organized bodies of believers united together in different places and under different creeds of religion, but all believing in Christ. The different churches are the same in the Peace Mission movement and under the Peace Mission movement. We have the Circle Mission Church Home and Training School here in the city of Philadelphia, and this is the Unity Mission Church, and we have the annex to this church here at 21st and Nowdane Streets, and we have the Nazareth Mission Church, and we have the Peace Center Church and Home Incorporated of New Jersey, and we have the Palace Mission Church and Home Incorporated of New Jersey, the same as this is the Unity Mission Church Home and Training School Incorporated of Pennsylvania. But each unit and each organization is an independent organization, an independent unit. Therefore, we believe in expressing our individual independence even as our country declared her independence as a nation. It is wonderful. Mrs. Ryder, it is wonderful. And I notice anyone may speak from your platform, whether they agree with you or not, when they speak. That is real democracy. Father, positively. Mrs. Ryder, it is really marvelous. It is like coming into a new world to be introduced to a group like this. Father, that's right. Here in this comment about being introduced to a new world, we get a window into Peace Pilgrim's understanding of what was going on with her that evening, and into the fact that she opened to a new perception of possibility in Father's presence and due to his example. Mrs. Ryder, and in the outside world you know nothing of it. You hear of it very vaguely. Father, of course there are many critics. Now, like I was going to say here, Father shows her a throwaway advertising a certain meeting to be held by another outside organization in a protest against Bilboism. Bilbo refers to an American senator at the time who was notoriously racist and segregationist. On which appear several vulgar, low-rating terms of discrimination in slang as Bilbo would use them. Also several words of discrimination and more commonly used and accepted by some as proper. Father then says, "Now I would very much like to work with these people in a protest against Bilboism, as you see it there, but yet there are some things I do not agree with them on." Mrs. Ryder, reading the throwaway, "I see. I don't know anything about this organization. It sounds very good." She reads, "End race hatred and religious intolerance." Father, well, that is what they are protesting against, race and religious intolerance. But now, where they are, of course, the people that have not been educated out of certain things, why, Father points to a word on the throwaway. Now, this word here is as vulgar as that word. Father points to another word. The first word Father pointed to was the one more commonly used, negro, and he compared it with the slang word ngr, saying they were just as vulgar. Mrs. Ryder, yes, I notice you don't use them. Father, but the people are ignorant to the fact that it is vulgar, and they have been taught that that word, negro, and in capital letters, would be logical. Mrs. Ryder, You see it in the dictionary. Father: That's right, but it is as vulgar as this word here, pointing to the slang word above mentioned. And it is also as vulgar as the word that Mr. Bilbo calls the Italian people and calls the Jewish people. All of these words are vulgar. That word there being vulgar, Father points to the word negro. But it has been used from years back through the ignorance of the people and by those who were malicious and prejudiced until they think it is not vulgar and think it is logical. Mrs. Ryder: It is used by well-meaning people who find it in the dictionary and think it is right. Father: Positively, but it is vulgar. Therefore we protest any usage of the word that tends to segregate or separate or low-rate or embarrass. And the word in itself, if you spell it with capital letters, the same size of the Empire State Building in New York, it is vulgar in my consideration. Mrs. Ryder: So you feel you can't work with anyone that uses the word, even though they are working for the same principle? Father: Well, they must harmonize. I cannot work with them effectively because I could not work with, well, no doubt if I was to call the Italian people Dagos, if I was to call the Jewish people what they call them, I don't even like to use those words. Mrs. Ryder: No. Father: Because I purged my vocabulary of all vulgarity. But they would not like to hear those words. Mrs. Ryder: No. Father: Because they know they are not true. They are used by such as Mr. Bilbo and others who are prejudiced to those minority groups, and of course they are used for the purpose of low-ration and for distortion. Mrs. Ryder: That's right. Father: If you want to disrecognize or to distort the minds of the people concerning a person of whom you are speaking, call him by one of those vulgar terms. Mrs. Ryder: That's right. Father: Oh, that's an old so-and-so, or that's an old so-and-so, whatsoever term they are using for the person in question. That is, for the purpose of distorting that person's mind. Mrs. Ryder: Do you use any term at all to distinguish? Father: Well, if it would necessarily fall in line to designate or differentiate between a person in an illustration. Mrs. Ryder: That is what I mean. What word would you use? Father: Well, it would not be altogether vulgar to call a person by his national origin. Mrs. Ryder: Well, you can't always do that. Supposing two people have the same national origin, that is what we call race. Father: Well, the national origin is what Bilbo is calling them there because they are of the Jewish nationality, or because they are of the Italian nationality. Mrs. Ryder: Well, isn't the Jewish a religion? Because if I adopted the religion, I would become a Jew, wouldn't I? Isn't it a religion and not a race? Father: Well, it is called the Jewish religion, but it is a nationality, or that which is termed commonly as a certain race of people. If we were speaking of animals, we would say a certain species of a person. Mrs. Ryder: You think it is a race then, do you, and not religion? Father: No, I do not, because there is one race and one nationality. Mrs. Ryder, smiling: Oh, yes, that's right. Father: You caught something there, did you not? Mrs. Ryder: Yes, well, to me, of course, the Jewish people, they were always a religious group, you see. Father: Well, they made the national origin a religion, as such, in a way of speaking, but they were supposed to be of the Jewish nationality, or commonly considered as the Jewish faith. But there are those who are of the Jewish birth, and yet they are not the Jewish faith. Mrs. Ryder: Yes, that's right. Father: There are some Christians in the Jewish nationality. Mrs. Ryder: I know. It is a little mixed, isn't it? Father: Certainly. It is a wonderful thought. So we try to get away from the usage of words that are discriminatory in practice. Mrs. Ryder: Yes, I agree with that. But how do you talk about the problem of the South? You have to in some way distinguish the groups. Father: Well, I say the nationality is not. Mrs. Ryder: Oh, could you say the Africans? Father: Positively, if you would speak to that degree, having not been born out of that state of consciousness, you could justifiably say, if you were speaking of the dark-complexioned people. Mrs. Ryder: Yes, that's what I mean. Father: You could say those of the African descendants. Mrs. Ryder: Oh, yes. Father: Or those of the Afro-Americans, you see. The same as you say the French Americans, the Spanish Americans, the Irish Americans. Mrs. Ryder: I see what you mean. Father: But you do not call them vulgarly by some low-rating name. Mrs. Ryder: Yes, I see what you mean. You could say the darker people of the world or lighter people. Father: Yes, and you could say more definitely and justifiably, without discrimination, the Afro-American, the same as you say the French-American, the same as you say the Spanish-American, the same as you say the Jewish-American. Sometimes you say a German Jew or a Polish Jew. You are speaking of the nationality from whence they came, and you are not using the term for the purpose of low-ration. Miss Ryder: Yes, that's the idea. I understand you now. Father: So you could justifiably say the Afro-American if you are speaking of those whom you deem their ancestors to have come from Africa, the same as you speak of someone who was of Irish descent, or the English Americans, or the French Americans and Spanish Americans, and many different things, names like that. But you do not use a low-rating term that has been used for the purpose of low-ration and for distortion. Father again takes up the throwaway and points to two words and says, either one of these words here, they are used for the purpose of distortion, to distort the minds of those to whom you speak and with whom you come in contact, concerning the person of whom you are speaking, you see, to discredit and to create discourtesy for that person, where you would ordinarily be courteous to the person if it was not something spoken as distortion and disapproval. The two words to which Father made reference were in and negro. Mrs. Ryder: That's right. Well, I shall never use that word again. But to tell the truth, I have used this word, referring to negro, which was found in the dictionary and which I thought to be correct. Father: I knew you had, but we do not condemn the person for using the word or any other word they don't know to be wrong. But when we know better, we do better. Mrs. Ryder: Well, since speaking to you, I shan't do it any more. Father: Well, I appreciate that. Therefore you and those with whom you are connected, as you impart that thought to them and cooperate to that end, we can prove our citizenry of a true democracy, of being one nation indivisible, as our Pledge of Allegiance to our flag calls for. Mrs. Ryder: It is wonderful. Father: We are getting together. We are getting somewhere now when we talk on those subjects and see eye to eye along those lines, not for self-exaltation or for self-justification or for the purpose of accusation or low-rating someone else, but just for facts, the truth that we might stand together for one democracy and one universal brotherhood. Mrs. Ryder: That is wonderful. Are you familiar with peace organizations in the country? Father: Well, I know of a few. Mrs. Ryder: The Women's International League for Peace and Fellowship legislation? Father: Positively. I have had some visit our meetings from time to time. We always have them attend, not only those, I might say, those who are relative, in other words, related to us religiously or spiritually, but even others, as I aforesaid. I allow anyone to come and speak, and if they are not with me in consciousness, it is okay. Every person has a right to his or her own belief. Mrs. Ryder. Yes. Well, that is admirable that you allow anyone to speak no matter what they believe. Of course, I could not say anything very much different than what your people believe, because I believe in the same thing. Father, smiling. Well, that is the beauty part of it. That is the beauty of the contact you made, because you are a part of us, you see. Mrs. Ryder, sweetly laughing. Yes, it is true, without even knowing it. Father, again smiling, without being conscious of it. Mrs. Ryder, it has been a wonderful experience. At this point, Father inquired of the waitress concerning whether or not the Holy Communion service was about ready, and upon receiving an answer to the affirmative, this beautiful interview terminated. Thank you, Father dear. I'd also like to highlight this part of the exchange as very significant. Mrs. Ryder said, "That's right. Well, I shall never use that word again. But to tell the truth, I have used this word," referring to negro, which I found in the dictionary and which I thought to be correct. To which Father answered, "I knew you had, but we do not condemn the person for using the word or any other word they don't know to be wrong. But when we know better, we do better." Mrs. Ryder, well, since speaking to you, I shan't do it any more. This exchange reminds me of Father's words, God is present in the midst of you, changing your vocabularies. This was another impactful moment that seems to have changed her perspective and impacted that communication aspect of her future mission. But perhaps for those of us who believe in and experience the reality of mystical inspiration and mystical connection, the clincher regarding Peace Pilgrim's relationship to Father Divine is in the passage of the exchange that begins with Mrs. Ryder saying, "Of course, I could not say anything very much different than what your people believe, because I believe in the same thing." Father, smiling, "Well, that is the beauty part of it. That is the beauty of the contact you made, because you are a part of us, you see." Mrs. Ryder, sweetly laughing, "Yes, it's true, without even knowing it." Speaking more truth, perhaps, than her conscious self was aware of, because Father responds, again smiling, without being conscious of it. She is a part of us without being conscious of it. It has been a wonderful experience, she concluded. Truly, these three highlighted passages are biographically significant for understanding the precipient factors that constellated to change the life of Mrs. Mildred Ryder into the living epistle or statute walking that is Peace Pilgrim. Father said, "I will put my spirit in the people and cause them to walk in my statutes." Here are 3 photographs that show aspects of Unity Mission Church Home and Training School, Philadelphia, where the first meeting between Peace Pilgrim and Father Divine took place. We see 2 different angles on the building and the Holy Communion banquet hall with table fully set. Because the meeting of any genuine or potential saints is highly significant it is likely that Father was a catalyst, at least partly at a conscious level, because of her explicit responses in the interview, to Peace Pilgrim's spiritual growth and development. And perhaps he was also an observed model of certain Christ-like characteristics in action and of willingness to chart a highly unconventional course in life. I wish to be clear, however, that there is no evidence that Father Divine served as an external guru, guide, or counselor to Peace Pilgrim, unless very briefly in the time her ex-husband alludes to. Peace Pilgrim is clear that her spiritual guidance was awakened from within, that she was guided by impersonal spirit in the inward form that Father calls the intutor, a word he derives from intuition. She seems to me to be a superlative model for living from purified intuition, and I do believe that she was privileged to meet God in human form, conscious of it or not, and that it blessed her at a crucial time in her unique journey. Now that Father is generally not accessible to us in the material body, Peace Pilgrim provides an excellent example of how to authentically hear and respond to the divine guidance within, and of the ego purification process that is necessary to achieve the fullness of spiritual endeavor. Father has not come to create a new Vatican or a new clergy of gatekeepers, which have no authority in his dispensation, but to awaken us to the ever-presence that includes the divine intutor who is universally accessible to everyone who truly knocks at his door.
I couldn't even point to people that have very much aided me along this path, because you see, I remember from the time I was 16 and a senior in high school, I took the inner way, and therefore for well, of course I call them spiritual things, I always looked to the inside rather than to the outside.
Peace Pilgrim had a clear inward connection and a clarity of intuition that may have been the fruit of her past lives. It may have just needed a little nudge and a push here and there in her development for it to flower in the extraordinary way that it did. Regarding this trust in the inward guidance, Father says, "Step out on the plain and trust only in the Infinite One, He that dwelleth within, and Bibles and hymn books will be closed up for you, for God is His own interpreter, and He will make it plain, bringing out all the hidden mysteries to mankind's understanding. The hidden treasures from ages back, here and now are being revealed unto the saints, and you are happy, and I am glad. The time cometh, and now is, that mankind will realize the deep mysteries and the height of intelligence that is hidden in the secrecy of the vocabularies of God's understanding, which is in man, and not in books. Jesus, the great love master, as a person, strove to get his disciples to see and recognize his presence as being all intelligence, without a book, for he said, "Go without purse and without scrip, and take nothing for your journey." And again he said, "When he, the Spirit of truth, has come, you need no man to teach you. He will teach you and lead you and guide you in all truth, whatsoever I have said unto you." That is why the world cannot understand, because the Bibles and hymn books are closed to me as far as I am concerned. And yet I am bringing out of both it and them the mysteries that have been hidden from ages back, and now revealing them unto the children of men, that they may get the real substance of them, and the substance of these words of truth, as being called or recorded in the book, as being termed the book of life, made up of the sustenance of their bodies and their souls. It is wonderful. That is why those who are seeking me, and when they once contact this truth, they know nothing else can and nothing else would do. It is wonderful. While sitting thinking, I brought under consideration how mankind must study and prepare his sermon and his sermons for days at a time, when God is sitting on the throne of his mind, waiting for him to still his conscious mentality, that he, God, might speak in him, and that the voice of God will be heard. It is wonderful. Father Divine, 6th of April, 1933 ADFD, republished in the New Day, 12th of August, 1989 AD, 44 FD. And on another occasion, Father said, "Scripturally I said, go without purse and without scrip. I said, take nothing for your journey." Now, as well as that quotation and command was given for the disciples to trust God implicitly for the food and for the necessary comfort and convenience and raiment and the like, it is applicable to wisdom, to knowledge, and to all understanding. It is operative and expressive to and for all things. It is just so marvelous, and you can rest in blessed assurance and peace to know God is your help in every need, and I need not personally be. Given on the 18th of April, 1953 ADFD, republished in the New Day, the 3rd of September, 1977 ADFD. In this testimony from June the 8th, 1968, Mother Divine mentions Father Divine's period of itineracy. Father dear, we thank you from the very depths of our hearts for preserving the freedom and liberty that mankind has struggled for eons of years to enjoy. To think that it could vanish from off the face of the earth so quickly had it not been for your great love, Father, in coming in your personal body, for going through 32 lynch mobs to make brotherhood a reality. If you had not walked the railroad tracks when you could have ridden, to preserve this independent way of life that is the foundation of our American form of government, it is wonderful, wonderful. And again, in another testimony recorded on October 21st, 1961, Mother says, "This is the law. Father gave it to us. We asked him for life. He gave it to us. He gave it to us plain, with no, like he said, it is hard sayings, but yet it is true. Father has said it over and over again. He said it in the body called Jesus when he laid the facts of life before them. They turned from him, and he said, 'Will ye also go?' And one said, 'From where or whither shall we go? For thou hast the words of eternal life.' There is no other way, children, but the straight and narrow way, the way of self-denial and consecration. I say there is not a thing you do that God is looking for from a material angle, or any of us that are with Father, for God alone is sufficient. Father Divine personally walked the railroad tracks, and those that were with him were glad to walk with him. And as I said, I would do the same today. He did it not because he had to, but he did it to establish this principle of life." And in the New Day for February 4th, 1967, a sister with the initials BML testifies, "As the sister said, we have a work to do. Indeed, we have a work to do. With our hands, with our feet, with our tongue, with our mind, we have a work to do. Because Father toiled years here with us. He toiled 24 hours a day. He toiled, and before that he walked the land and country, walked over the railroad tracks, walked and walked and walked, and if he could have exhausted his little body, he would have walked his shoes down, going here and going there, to call his children out of sin to salvation. He has been all over. Mother volitionally and dynamically says, "Looking for you." Thunderous applause resounds in sanction to Mother's remark. Miss Love continues, "Father has been all over the world, walking like a humble traveler, God Almighty, the humblest of all creation. And he would go there and call that one, and call this one, and call that one, and call us, and call us, and call us into body salvation." The testimony of another sister, Miss S.L., is recorded in The New Day for the 11th of February, 1978, ADFD 32 FT. "Father dear, you have paid the price. Your body went through 32 lynch mobs. You traveled, Father dear. You told us, Father dear, how you used to walk the railroad tracks, and we know you have come up through generations, generations and generations, through criticism, and even in this day, Father, and every time, Father has never lost a battle. Father has had his worst enemy sit at his Holy Communion table and has treated them like a king or a queen. And you know, as I get on in this truth, day by day, I say to the children, I'll say to the children at home, I'll say, children, if you didn't know Father Divine is God, you would know it now, because I said, just the little we have to do, only God Almighty himself would take it, because he has not only us to care for, he has the world to care for, and not only that, he has the world of sometimes criticism, criticizing everything he did, and yet he was forging through, not for himself, but for us, to bring us up to this day. And another touching testimony from Miss M.W.H., recorded in the New Day for December 14th, 1957 ADFD, which highlights the way Father Divine planted seeds or energy that may have flowered many years later. She says, "When I was a small child, I used to walk down the railroad on the rails barefoot, and one day I said to the little brother, while we were walking, I wonder if God ever walks down the railroad. Now, Father, after many, many years have passed, I know, for I read one day in the Spoken Word or an early edition of the New Day, where you said that many times you had walked down the railroad tracks and looked in the coaches and seen the people riding. I don't know if I have said it just right or not, but I do remember you answered me." Peace Pilgrim said, "In undertaking this pilgrimage, I do not think of myself as an individual, but rather as an embodiment of the heart of the world, which is pleading for peace." Here is a map of Peace Pilgrim's progress prior to 1964. When she reached 25,000 miles, she stopped keeping track, though she continued her pilgrimage for the rest of her life until 1981. For 28 years and somewhere near 50,000 total miles, Peace Pilgrim walked her talk to and fro across this continent. For an indeterminate period of time before 1913, probably beginning in the 1870s, according to Father's words and the earliest follower accounts, Father Divine was personally itinerant, traveling, as he said, without purse or scrip, which in modern language would be without a billfold or a dollar bill, by following the train tracks, at least of the eastern states, north to south, and probably beyond. In 1906-1907, Father probably personally traveled as far west as California, Los Angeles and San Francisco being mentioned. But that was probably not by walking the train tracks at that point. In any case, Father and Peace Pilgrim both made extensive on-foot journeys throughout large portions of the United States, and it's wonderful to think about the consecrating power that would pour through them as channels open to the infinite. When Father walked the rails of the East Coast train tracks, how far did the spiritual, metaphysical, and subtle vibrations of his thought and his physical presence travel?
Now, a pilgrim has no visible means of support, and so I have no money, and I don't accept any money. And I belong to no organization. There is no organizational backing behind me. And all I own is what I wear and the few things I carry in my little pockets. I walk until given shelter, fast until given food. I don't even ask. It must be given. And it is. People are good. There's a spark of good in everybody, no matter how deeply it may be buried. It is always there. And then, about 41 years ago now, 15 years before the pilgrimage started, I chose freedom from unnecessary possessions and meaningless activities. I came out of my empty life of money and things and started to live to give instead of to get. Well, my life just blossomed out. 3 things happened. I attained the great blessing of good health. I haven't had an ache or a pain or a cold or a headache for 41 years. I knew my life work was going to be work for peace and the whole peace picture. And long after I had finished the physical growing up, and I had finished the mental growing up. I had enough knowledge to get along. I could make my own decisions. And I had finished the emotional growing up. I could get along with people and with myself. I started the psychological growing up, which takes you from the self-centered life into the life that sees you in proper perspective as a part of the whole and works for the good of the whole. You see that every human being is of equal importance. Every one of them has a job to do. Every one of them has equal potential, but we're in very varied stages of growth.
Inspiration for the spirit, nourishment for the mind and heart, and actual food and raiment for the material body are provided according to Father, when one steps out in tremendous faith, relying wholeheartedly on God, just as Peace Pilgrim apparently did. Father himself had done this for many years in the early days of his manifestation in this country, going without purse or scrip as he enjoined all others to do, and never taking up collections or soliciting money. Let's look at a few of many quotations from Father Divine that illustrate this instruction to go without purse or scrip, that is to say, in more contemporary language, without a billfold or a dollar bill. Around January the 28th, 1989 AD, 43 FD, Mother Divine said, "That was what Father was going to prove, that the gospel could be preached without purse and without scrip, and Father, at that time, just went in the wake of his Spirit. Wherever his Spirit led him, that's where he would go. He trusted his spirit and wouldn't touch a penny of money, nor would he write a letter. He didn't want any identification. Like it says, the wind bloweth where it listeth, and thou hearest the sound thereof, but canst not tell whence it cometh and whither it goeth. So is every one that is born of God. He just was one with the great universal mind substance, trusting his spirit, and wherever he went he was a blessing, and whatever he needed came to him, as far as food to eat and a place to lay his head. Mother Divine. Father says, now in this last time in which we are now living as the fulfiller of the Scripture, since a good many of the others did not fulfill it, I said many years ago, Christ sent his disciples out, and he told them to go without price, in other words, without purse and without scrip, and take nothing for your journey. They failed to do it. But I said I would do it myself. I came forth and fulfilled the word to the letter, and still am fulfilling it in the name of the Almighty, fulfilling the word that must be, as history repeats itself accurately, scientifically, and definitely, as the reiteration, and as the repetition of that which had been spoken predictionally, and even in the actuated words of expression, by many, it is being repeated. Therefore, history repeats itself over and over again. If haply I happen to be the fulfiller of the word, and choose to have commissioned myself to fulfill the pre-commission of the disciples, then I may haply fulfill the command, otherwise as a repetitioner, in other words, one that would reiterate the actuated words of expression. Given on the 16th of June, 1942 ADFD, republished in The New Day, 8th of April, 1967 ADFD. Father also said, I have long since declared, and I am redeclaring the same continually. Christ said, go without purse and without scrip, and take nothing for your journey. I am stressing it in actions. I am stressing it in deeds. I am proving to the world conclusively, even in prison, in stone prison walls and behind iron prison bars, my spirit, as a missionary and as a redeemer and savior, can go and emancipate those who sit in prison, in the valley, and the shadow of death, and in darkness, for a great light has truly come. Given on the 15th of April, 1941 ADFD, reprinted in The New Day, 6th of August, 1983 ADFD. Under the heading, One Should Receive Nothing for Preaching, Father Divine says, it also says on another occasion, in another quotation or scripture, whichever, go without purse and without scrip, and take nothing for your journey. All of my true followers' conviction is that they should not pay anyone a penny for preaching the gospel, not a penny. Their religious conviction is that they should not pay anyone a penny for preaching the gospel, for salvation is free. For Christ told the disciples to go without purse and without scrip and take nothing for your journey. Therefore, the true followers of Father Divine, they would not pay him as a person, and they will not pay any man for preaching the gospel. They will pay for practical and material service they receive from men, anything that is practical and profitable. They are willing to pay their just and honest debts wheresoever they go, but they are not willing to pay for the gospel. For if salvation, as being termed religion, was a thing that money could buy, the rich would live and the poor would die. Therefore your faith in God should not be sold for a price. Judas sold the body of Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. So it is a privilege to live in this recognition where you are free from graft and greed and free from racketeering on the Scripture, racketeering on the gospel, and racketeering on the gifts and talents of the Almighty. Given the 26th of October, 1941 ADFD, reprinted in The New Day, the 5th of October, 1968, ADFT. Father says, "Well, I tell you, as I have often said, personally I do by others as I do by myself. My immediate staff and others with whom I am concerned, we go without purse and without scrip, as said the first commission of the gospel of Jesus, and we take nothing for our journey. Hence we work from that angle, relying on the infinite implicitly, wholeheartedly, definitely, once and forever, and God supplies the needs of everyone." Given the 30th of December 1941 ADFT, reprinted in The New Day, the 20th of September 1980 AD 35 FT. Seeking the principle. Father says, "Then you need not feel as if though you must lack for anything. Why feel limited and claim to know God, when the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof? As those of you may be supposedly traveling, so went I, not out into the wilderness to see a man, but I carried with me this principle, and materializing this principle, it is without condemnation, for I have brought to the conscious recognition of the children of men the recognition, the actual recognition of God's presence. For I went not out into the wilderness to see or to seek a man, but a principle I carried, and a principle I have sought, and a principle I have found expressing in them. It is wonderful. And as you should be, so have I been, without purse and without scrip, taking nothing for my journey. At one time not even as much as touching 1 penny, not as much as 1 penny. And yet, when Mrs. Devine, better known as Mother, first saw me, she heard me say I lacked for nothing, and yet asked no man for anything. The spirit of independence must be in you by the recognition of Him within that liveth forever and ever, realizing that God is your Father, and you never had another, and your Father is truly rich in houses and lands. He holdeth the wealth of the world in His hand." Given on the 17th of March, 1933 ADFD, reprinted in The New Day, the 22nd of October, 1977 AD 32 FD. Father says, "You have no right to take pay for spiritual advice and inspirations." One writer said, "Why pay money for that which you cannot eat?" So it is something to consider. Why would you pay for something that is invisible, when that which is invisible, intangible, and impractical may be given you inspirationally, intuitively, and scientifically, but not mechanically, physically, or personally? That which is given mechanically, physically, and personally as real, personal, and physical service, for the personal benefit of your bodies as practical service, why, you have a right to have pay for such material or personal service, but you do not have a right to have any pay whatsoever for spiritual advice and for spiritual inspirations that come from Christ and your great Creator. Therefore I preach the gospel without money and without price, according to the first commission of the disciples of Christ. Go without purse and without scrip, and take nothing for your journey. So it is a privilege, dear ones, to live in this recognition and build upon this foundation that cannot be shaken. Then I say, my followers who are true and faithful, they will not receive a penny for something that is spiritual, something that is mental and invisible. They only receive pay for something they do physically, personally, or from a tangible point of view. That is what I'm talking about. But even at that, in the public mass meetings and at the different churches, they sell diverse refreshments and foodstuffs and other articles for much less than they can be purchased elsewhere, and that is our system for taking up collections, and we know we are justified in doing so. Given on the 22nd of March, 1942 ADFD, reprinted in The New Day, the 4th of July, 1987 AD, 42 FD. Early in her walk, Peace Pilgrim made these statements to a reporter about her message. Quote, "In undertaking this pilgrimage, I do not think of myself as an individual, but rather as an embodiment of the heart of the world, which is pleading for peace. My friends, the world situation is grave. Humanity, with fearful, faltering steps, walks a knife edge between complete chaos and a golden age, while strong forces push toward chaos. My friends, the world situation is grave. Humanity, with fearful, faltering steps, walks a knife edge between complete chaos and a golden age, while strong forces push toward chaos. Unless we, the people of the world, awake from our lethargy and push firmly and quickly away from chaos, all that we cherish will be destroyed. This is the way of peace. Overcome evil with good, falsehood with truth, and hatred with love. The Golden Rule would do as well. Please do not say lightly that these are just religious concepts and not practical. These are laws governing human conduct which apply as rigidly as the law of gravity. When we disregard these laws in any walk of life, chaos results. Through obedience to these laws, this frightened, war-weary world of ours could enter into a period of peace and richness beyond our fondest dreams.
One more thing, a pilgrim usually has a message, and this one certainly does. It says in one sentence, this is the way of peace. Overcome evil with good, and falsehood with truth, and hatred with love. Now, there's nothing new about that except the practice of it. But I consider it the lesson for today, and so it becomes the message of my peace pilgrimage.
Here is the chart of spiritual growth or life pattern that Peace Pilgrim included in her books and frequently in her public talks. I will link to a video of her addressing a college class from which the excerpts in this video have been taken, in which she has an extended explanation of how these stages applied in her own life, coupled with valuable insights to any seeker. And I highly recommend that you listen to that and to other material directly from her. Her voice is a blessing in itself, which is a divine attribute. Receptively hearing her speak is in itself healing and purifying, a good reset. The 7 stages represented in her chart, in the short version, represent the ups and downs of emotion within the self-centered nature. 2, the first hump of no return, complete willingness without reservation to give her life to serve the higher will, living to give instead of to get. 3, battle between the God-centered nature and the self-centered nature, which may be where many of us find ourselves. 4, her first peak experience, a glimpse of inner peace. In many other people's journey, this may have come earlier, before the transformations began. 5, longer and longer plateaus of inner peace. And then 6, she achieved at age 45 complete inner peace, and was given a vision of her future pilgrimage. And 7, continuation of growth on a steadily upward path with no more valleys. She can, of course, describe this much more richly than I can, and I do urge you to look up and listen to her explanation. The link will be in the video description. Peace Pilgrim's teachings are simple and direct, and they are derived from her lived experience and can lead to the highest spiritual rewards. One very practical aspect of her teaching is her enumeration of 3 sets of 4 preparations, 4 purifications, and 4 relinquishments that she, from her own experience, narrates in her book and lectures. The 4 preparations are: assume right attitude toward life, live good beliefs, find your place in the life pattern, simplify life to bring inner and outer well-being into harmony. The 4 purifications are purification of the bodily temple, purification of the thoughts, purification of the desires, purification of the motives. And the 4 relinquishments: relinquishment of self-will, relinquishment of the feeling of separateness, relinquishment of attachments, and relinquishment of all negative feelings. These teachings are very much in accord and in harmony with the teachings and practice of Father Divine. Here are 3 of the available books which elaborate Peace Pilgrim's life and teachings. First, the Steps Toward Inner Peace booklet, which she personally oversaw during her lifetime. I believe that first came out in the 1960s, and it will describe her core ideas and how she applied them. And then behind that, you see the picture of her walking on a country road. Peace Pilgrim, Her Life and Works in Her Own Words. This is a compilation posthumously compiled by people who admired her and who had the aspiration to make her words and example available to others. I believe they are called Friends of Peace Pilgrim, and you can read the full text of that book online, and you can request a copy. It's also widely available in used bookstores at low cost, and I certainly recommend that the friends and followers of Father Divine, anyone who is aspiring to the kind of life that Father exemplifies and enjoins, look at Peace Pilgrim as an example, particularly for our emerging world and our emerging time and place. The other book pictured is Peace Pilgrim, Walking Her Talk Against Hate, which is a biographical novel that sticks very close to history and to Peace Pilgrim's words, but tries to put her life into a narrative form. All of these I highly recommend for your consideration. Here are 2 examples of the kind of material you will find in the Life and Works compilation. In response to someone who asked her, "How can I feel close to God?" Peace Pilgrim responded, "God is love, and whenever you reach out in loving kindness, you are expressing God. God is truth, and whenever you seek truth, you are seeking God. God is beauty, and whenever you touch the beauty of a flower or a sunset, you are touching God. God is the intelligence that creates all and sustains all and binds all together and gives life to all. Yes, God is the essence of all. So you are within God, and God is within you. You could not be where God is not. Permeating all is the law of God, physical law and spiritual law. Disobey it and you feel unhappiness. You feel separated from God. Obey it and you feel harmony. You feel close to God. As you live in harmony with divine law, you will feel closer to and develop more love for God. And in answer to the question, can spiritual growth be accomplished quickly, or does it take a while? Peace Pilgrim responded, spiritual growth is a process the same as physical growth or mental growth. 5-year-old children do not expect to be as tall as their parents at their next birthday. The first grader does not expect to graduate into college at the end of the term. The truth student should not expect to attain inner peace overnight. It took me 15 years. The spiritual growing up is a very interesting and enjoyable process. There should be no wish to either hasten it or slow it down. Just experience it and take the steps toward inner peace and let it unfold. Here we see a memorial erected at the site of the accident that claimed Peace Pilgrim's mortal life. That is located in Washington Township, Indiana. I find it somewhat interesting that it is a white pyramidal cairn echoing the shape of Father Divine's Shrine to Life. Not intentionally, but a synchronous resemblance, considering their connection. And in the lower right is a photograph of Peace Pilgrim's grave marker, which is in her birthplace, Egg Harbor, New Jersey. Egg Harbor also hosts a Peace Pilgrim Park on reclaimed land, which includes a lovely bronze statue in honor of Peace Pilgrim. I haven't visited these sites associated with her, but I would like to in pilgrimages of my own. In Steps Toward Inner Peace, Peace Pilgrim describes her journey this way. In my early life, I made 2 very important discoveries. In the first place, I discovered that making money was easy. And in the second place, I discovered that making money and spending it foolishly was completely meaningless. I knew that this was not what I was here for, but at the time, this was many years ago, I didn't know exactly what I was here for. It was out of a very deep seeking for a meaningful way of life, and after having walked all one night through the woods, that I came to what I now know to be a very important psychological hump. I felt a complete willingness, without any reservations, to give my life, to dedicate my life to service. I tell you, it's a point of no return. After that, you can never go back to completely self-centered living. And so I went into the second phase of my life. I began to live to give what I could, instead of to get what I could. And I entered a new and wonderful world. My life began to become meaningful. I attained the great blessing of good health. I haven't had a cold or headache since. Most illness is psychologically induced. From that time on, I have known that my life work would be work for peace, that it would cover the whole peace picture. Peace among nations, peace among groups, peace among individuals, and the very, very important inner peace. However, there's a great deal of difference between being willing to give your life and actually giving your life. And for me, 15 years of preparation and of inner seeking lay between. During this time, I became acquainted with what the psychologists refer to as ego and conscience. I began to realize that it's as though we have 2 selves or 2 natures or 2 wills with 2 different viewpoints. Because the viewpoints were so different, I felt a struggle in my life at this period between the 2 selves with the 2 viewpoints. So there were hills and valleys, lots of hills and valleys. Then, in the midst of the struggle, there came a wonderful mountaintop experience, and for the first time I knew what inner peace was like. I felt a oneness with all my fellow human beings, oneness with all of creation. I have never really felt separate since. I could return again and again to this wonderful mountaintop, and then I could stay there for longer and longer periods of time, and just slip out occasionally. Then came a wonderful morning when I woke up and knew that I would never have to descend again into the valley. I knew that for me the struggle was over, that finally I had succeeded in giving my life, or finding inner peace. Again, this is a point of no return. You can never go back into the struggle. The struggle is over now because you will do the right thing, and you don't need to be pushed into it. However, progress is not over. We thank you, Father and Mother Divine.